Today's gospel reading comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 9, verses 1 through 41. As Jesus walked along, he saw someone who had been blind from birth. The disciples asked Jesus, "Rabbi, was it this individual's sin that caused the blindness or that of the parents?" "Neither," answered Jesus. "It wasn't because of anyone's sin, not this person's nor the parents'. Rather, it was to let God's works shine forth in this person. We must do the deeds of the one who sent me while it's still day, for night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." With that, Jesus spat on the ground, made mud with his saliva, and smeared the blind one's eyes with the mud. Then Jesus said, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam." Siloam means sent. So the person went off to wash and came back able to see. Neighbors and those who had been accustomed to seeing the blind beggar began to ask, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said yes, others said no. The one who had been healed simply looked like the beggar, but the individual in question said, "No, it was me." The people then asked, "Then how were your eyes opened?" The answer came, "The one they called Jesus made mud and smeared it on my eyes and told me to go to Siloam and wash. When I went and washed, I was able to see." "Where is Jesus?" they asked. The person replied, "I have no idea." They took the one who had been born blind to the Pharisees. It had been on a Sabbath that Jesus had made the mud paste and opened this one's eyes. The Pharisees asked how the individual could see. They were told, "Jesus put mud on my eyes. I washed it off, and now I can see." This prompted some Pharisees to say, "This Jesus cannot be from God because he does not keep the Sabbath." Others argued, "But how could a sinner perform signs like these?" They were sharply divided. Then they addressed the blind person again. "Since it was your eyes he opened, what do you have to say about this Jesus?" "He's a prophet," came the reply. The temple authorities refused to believe that this one had been blind and had begun to see until they summoned the parents. "Is this your child?" they asked. "And if so, do you attest that your child was blind at birth? How do you account for the fact that now your child can see?" The parents answered, "We know this is our child blind from birth, but how our child can see now or who opened those blind eyes, we have no idea. But don't ask us. Our child is old enough to speak without us." The parents answered this way because they were afraid of the temple authorities, who had already agreed among themselves that anyone who acknowledged Jesus as the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. That was why they said, "Our child is of age and should be asked directly." A second time they summoned the one who had been born blind and said, "Give God the glory instead. We know that this Jesus is a sinner." "I don't know whether he is a sinner or not," the individual answered. "All I know is that I used to be blind and now I can see." They persisted. "Just what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" "I already told you, but you won't listen to me," came the answer. "Why do you want to hear it all over again? Don't tell me you want to become disciples of Jesus too." They retorted scornfully, "You're the one who is Jesus' disciple. We're disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we have no idea where this Jesus comes from." The other retorted, "Well, this is news. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God doesn't hear sinners, but that if people are devout and obey God's will, God listens to them. It is unheard of that anyone ever gave sight to a person blind from birth. If this one were not from God, he could never have done such a thing." "What?" they exclaimed. "You're steeped in sin from birth, and you're giving us lectures?" With that, they threw the person out. When Jesus heard of the expulsion, he sought out the healed one and asked, "Do you believe in the chosen one?" The other answered, "Who is this one that I may believe?" You are looking at him, Jesus replied. The chosen one is speaking to you now. The healed one said, Yes, I believe, and worshiped Jesus. And Jesus said, I came into this world to execute justice, to make the sightless see and the seeing blind. Some of the Pharisees who were nearby heard this and said, You're not calling us blind, are you? To which Jesus replied, If you were blind, there would be no sin in that. But since you say, We see, your sin remains. May our still speaking God grant us wisdom and understanding.